우리나라에도 예전에 비해서 이스라엘을 사랑하고 이스라엘을 축복하는 교회들이 점점 많이 늘어나고 있죠. 그건 뭐 제가 지금 와 있는 일본 동경도 다를 바가 없습니다. 제가 와 있는 이 교회는요, 목사님은 일본 분이시지만 사모님은 유대인, 예수님을 믿는, 예수를 믿는 메시아닉 유대인. 그러니까 이 교회 목사님 부부는 유대인과 이방인이 연합하여 한 세 사람을 이루는 그런 가정이고 그런 교회다, 이렇게 볼 수가 있죠. 그러니 이 교회야말로 얼마나 또 이스라엘을 사랑하고 축복을 하겠습니까? 이스라엘을 위해서 또 이스라엘을 축복하고 기도하는 일본 땅에서 이스라엘 향해서 특별히 사역하고 있는 이분들의 이야기를 오늘은 좀 들어보려고 하는데요. 동경에 있는 트리 오브 라이프 컨그리게이션의 이삭 우치야마 목사님, 그리고 엘리사 우치야마 사모님, 오늘 두 분의 이야기들을 좀 자세하게 들어보도록 하겠습니다. 안녕하십니까? 반갑습니다. 하지메 마시테.
하지메 마시테.
Nice to meet you. 제가 지금 와 있는 이 트리 오브 라이프 컨그리게이션 굉장히 특이하면서도 저는 굉장히 반가운 장소거든요. 목사님께서 우선 이 트리 오브 라이프 컨그리게이션에 대해서 좀 소개를 해주시죠.
So this is Tree of Life Japan, and what we're doing here is we are worshiping Jew and Gentile together in a Messianic Jewish context. And we say Messianic Jewish because we have Jewish believers like Melissa, and also our children, our Jewish children, and we're raising them in the faith of Yeshua, but also as Japanese. So it's a very unique mixing point for us. And also I myself, I grew up in the Messianic Jewish movement. I never went to a church. I never went to a Christian normal community. I was always in Messianic Judaism. So for me, it's like second nature. I don't know anything else. I have learned things, but this is who I am. And then I spent 3 years in Israel. I went to Israel College of the Bible from 1999 to 2002, and I graduated with a theology degree from Israel College of the Bible. So with all that, we came and Melissa and I, we joined my parents in this ministry probably in 2000. We came to Japan in 2008. But we didn't really get involved in the ministry until maybe 2013, 14. And then from there, we started holding services in English as well, because my Japanese was not good enough. When I came back to Japan, I didn't speak enough Japanese, and Melissa didn't speak any. So we were very lost. But over time, I started learning Japanese, and my father was pushing me, saying, Isaac, you have a calling, you should be in ministry. Just start translating for me on Shabbat at the service. And I said, I don't understand half of what you're saying, but he pushed me, and that's how he got me more into the ministry. And this also improved my Japanese a lot. And Melissa's Japanese has also improved a lot over the years. So this community we have, it is very international. We have people from many, many nations who are part of this ministry, this congregation. And now, the newest thing since last year, since November, is we have Israelis, non-believing Israelis, who are participating in our Shabbat services and being with us as part of this community, even as temporary, but they connect with us. So it's really a unique situation here in Japan to be able to have a Messianic Jewish community, Messianic Jewish worship, having Israeli non-believers in our midst, also reaching out to Japanese people, and also connecting with international people here in Japan.
이삭 목사님은 물론 이제 부모님이 이제 이삭 목사님 어렸을 때부터 메시아닉 이 신학을 가지셨기 때문에 자연스럽게 받아들이실 수 있었겠지만, 그래도 일본인으로서 기독교 신앙을 갖는 것도 사실은 쉽지 않은데, 더더군다나 이 메시아닉 신앙을 이 일본인으로서 이렇게 받아들이는데 어렵진 않았습니까?
I don't think it's any more difficult than receiving Christianity, but what we see in our conversations with Japanese people is when we tell them, when we explain what is Messianic Judaism, and when we explain that the first followers of Yeshua, Jesus, were all Jews, and that is what Christianity came from, sometimes kind of the light goes on in their head and say, oh, that makes more sense. And we get the same response also from Israelis when we explain this, because they see Christianity as one thing, and they never understood how it became this when they heard that Jesus is Jewish. So it's the same thing, I think, for even Japanese people. Because as you know, Japan is less than 1% Christian, less than 1%. And they have some kind of scales on their eyes, just like Jewish people. I really believe this. And it's the same challenge. It's the same spiritual blindness that exists that has to come off. So either way, it has to be a work of the Holy Spirit.
That's right.
Either way, it has to be us speaking the truth and preaching the Word of God.
That's right.
So I don't know that it's more difficult for Japanese to receive Christianity versus from a Messianic Jewish perspective. Either way is difficult.
사모님은 그러면은 메시아닉 컨그리게이션에서 만난 겁니까?
We did not meet each other at a Messianic congregation, but at a huge conference where many Messianic congregations were coming together. And there was a camp for Messianic young people, for kids and teens, and we were both camp counselors. So we met there, and we discovered just a lot of shared experience and of course shared faith.
그래서 두 분이 어떻게 누가 먼저 관심을 갖고 이렇게 데이트 신청을 하고 결혼을 하게 된 겁니까?
Well, it really was a connection at first sight. As soon as I saw her and she saw me, there was a connection. And then the next 3 years are kind of debatable. We argue about what happened, but we didn't start dating or seeing each other right away after that conference. And then it was 3 years later that I went down to Florida with some friends, and I remembered Melissa was there. And so we started writing, and we spent 36 hours there in Florida, in Boca Raton, me and my friends, and Melissa's community of friends. And then after this, I knew she was the one for me. So this is how it all kind of... Yeah.
제가 맨 처음 이제 소개할 때 유대인과 이방인이 연합하여 한 세 사람을 이루었다 이렇게 표현을 했는데 혹시 다른 분들도 그렇게 표현하는 분들이 있습니까? 두 분을 보고?
Yes, this does come up sometimes. Part of Melissa and my ministry is also to visit Japanese churches here in Japan and to demonstrate to them what is the one new man. Of course, in our marriage, it's very real, and we even have children to prove it. But this oneness is really when we take Melissa, a Jewish believer living in Japan, to a Japanese Christian church who many times they've never met a Jewish person, let alone a Messianic Jew, really their hearts open up in a big way. And when they can hold Melissa's hand, and sometimes they say the words of Ruth, you know, your people will be my people, your God will be my God. And they say this to Melissa. It's really the heart of God, of John 17, to see the unity among us. But in the Romans, 11, one new man, the oneness, we really see it manifested when we take it.
Yeah, and having a shared love for Japan and a shared love for Israel.
Yeah, because she loves Japan also. It's mutual, it's not just, Japanese people are loving a Jewish person, but her heart is also for Japan. So it brings a real sense of one new man here in Japan that is very unique.
Right.
그러면 이 일본에 이렇게 메시아닉 컨그리게이션이 있는 거 뭐 외롭거나 이렇게 힘들지 않습니까?
I think it can be lonely to be a Messianic Jew sometimes. So I don't know, in Japan, yeah, it can be lonely to be a Messianic Jewish congregation, but we're different than a church, and we might stand out, and we're doing something different. Saturdays versus Sundays, keeping to the Torah, wanting to observe it. But I'm also different from an unbelieving Jewish person, so I can experience a lot of loneliness about that. I love my people, but I might be excluded. They might say that I'm not a Jew because I have Yeshua, right? But me in a community, in a congregation of people who love the God of Israel, I am supported and loved, and we're together in this, and they love me through it. And I also realized that the Japanese or the international people who worship in a messianic way in this community also might be ostracized or treated differently by their Christian peers because they're like, what are you doing? You're not Jewish, you know? So there's a shared bond maybe, and I don't know, as we seek the Lord together and as we worship day to day and through the calendar. So it can be lonely, but it also can be exciting and beautiful and very joyful.
혹시 일본에 있는 그 기독교 목사님들이나 또는 교단분들이 여긴 뭐 하는 데입니까 하고 이렇게 관심을 갖고 질문하거나 찾아오는 분들도 있어요?
Definitely, we receive inquiries because more and more people are becoming aware of Tree of Life, and they're realizing there's a Messianic Jewish congregation in Japan. But these are people who I think somewhere already God has touched their heart about Israel and about Jewish people, and so they're searching and they're hearing or they're asking. So when they come to us, it's really, there is a real openness to them already. And so I never have to really convince anybody. They're already just so hungry to connect with the God of Israel. They're hungry to connect with the God of the Bible through understanding the role and nature of Israel and the calling of Israel. So through this, we've developed really great relationships with some churches. And some of these pastors have really become my close friends and partners in prayer and confidants even. So we've really felt the support of the church in Japan growing more and more with every year that we're doing this. And we're so blessed by it, and we really need them. We need the Gentile church here in Japan to support what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And they're coming to our events more and more, and they're inviting you to be part of what they're doing and to speak or to. So there's a relationship, and I think there's an excitement to really live out and find out what is this one new man and how can we be it? How can we do this?
And the benefit of Zoom, because every Shabbat we're having the service here, but also on Zoom. So we have usually 4 or 5 pastors, Sunday church pastors, who are joining our Shabbat service, and they're listening to the teaching and they're learning it. And a lot of them actually just take the message and they deliver it on Sunday to their congregation. Because we're teaching from the Parashah Shavua, the weekly portion. And there aren't many churches in Japan that are able to teach from the Tanakh, from the Old Testament context, and bring it to light in the way that we are able to, and in Japanese especially, right? All over the world there are Messianic Jewish teachers who are doing the same thing, but we are doing it in Japanese. And this is, I think, very beneficial for many Christians and church leaders to start learning from and to receive.
일본의 일반인 기독교인들, 평신도들이나 아니면 여기 이 지역에 살고 있는 다른 이 주민들이 관심을 갖고 이렇게 찾아와서 여긴 뭐 하는 데입니까? 또 메시아닉 티칭은 어떤 겁니까? 이렇게 관심을 갖고 오시는 분들도 있습니까?
I think the local people, non-believers, they do ask through our community relationships, shop owners, parents of students, of our children's like classmates. So they do ask, but usually there's just this, so it's like they don't get it, you know, but they're not afraid of it. They don't have a problem with it, but they're like, they're like, that's interesting, you know. With Christians who are not pastors, I think also there's really a hunger and an interest for this because they are, in this day and age, with YouTube, with social media, there's much more information accessible. And just with Tree of Life, but also with Chosen People Ministries. So my ministry partner is David Trubeck, and he's also an elder in this congregation. But he's in Israel doing Jewish evangelism in Tel Aviv. But he loves Japan, and so he's posting online almost daily basis something in Japanese from Israel. And so more and more Japanese Christians are connecting with this, and then he's connecting them to us, and it's, we're learning about each other and building relationships. So I think many non-pastors, normal members of churches are starting to also get this heart, even before some of their leaders do.
Yeah.
Sometimes this happens,
true.
and then they introduce us to their pastors, and it's really a beautiful thing.
이상 목사님께서는 또 이 사역도 하시면서 일본 동경에 있는 로펌에서도 또 일을 하신다고 그랬어요. 로펌 일도 굉장히 뭐 바쁘기로 치면 만만치 않을 것 같은데 로펌 일도 하고 또 이 사역도 하고 양쪽 일을 다 하시다 보면은 벅차지 않습니까?
Is it too heavy? No. When people see what I do between the congregation, Chosen People Ministries, and the guest house that we have, and Toward Jerusalem Council 2 work, my family, we have 3 beautiful children, and EY is the firm I work with. It's a global professional services firm. Yeah, it seems like a lot, but for me, this is just all the things that God has brought before me. And it's just such a joy to do all of these things. And yeah, I have long days and long hours, but God has given me the grace to do these things. And I also know there is support. There's prayer support, but there's also people who have come alongside, and who I'm not doing these things alone. There are teams of people. There's people in Israel. There's people in America. There's people here in Japan who are supporting us, working with us, and coming alongside us. So it's never just me. I rely so much also on my wife to help me carry all of these things. So it's not too much. It looks like too much, but it doesn't feel like too much. It feels like just such a joy and an honor to be able to do all this.
조금 전에 게스트하우스를 운영한다는 얘기를 하셨어요. 그 이름이 베이트 사무라이라고 했는데 일본으로 여행 오는 이스라엘 사람들을 위해서 그 머물게 하는 그런 게스트하우스를 운영하신다고 했는데 그렇게 게스트하우스를 운영하시는 특별한 이유가 있습니까?
So the vision of Beit Samurai is, the word samurai means servant. And so it's a house of servants. And it's, for us, it means Yeshua. He's the ultimate servant, right? But for the Israelis, samurai is a very cool concept. The soldier who's faithful, disciplined. And Beit, of course, is Hebrew for house. And it's a place that they connect with. Anytime they see the word Beit, they know it's a place that's safe for Jewish people. So we received this idea when we connected with my brother David Trubeck. So David Trubeck and Victoria, they came to Japan in 2000, maybe 15, 16, the first time. And we didn't know each other, but we met, and he said to me, did you know that last year 30,000 Israelis came to Japan? And I said, what? No way. And then we looked at the statistics issued by the Japanese government on how many Israeli passports came into Japan. And so we saw that since maybe 2015, 16, every single year it's going up by like 5,000 more. 2019, the year before the pandemic began, 44,000 Israelis traveled to Japan. And so when we realized this, we said, wow, there are Jewish Israeli non-believers right before our noses. We could be connecting with them. We could be sharing the good news of Yeshua with them. And so he said, why don't we do a guest house? It was his suggestion, but then the pandemic happened, and so it was left to me and Melissa to really make this vision a reality. So we really started praying this way. We started talking this way. We started teaching this way, and preparing the community this way, that this was what God wanted. That this was on God's heart, that we would one day have a guest house ministry to host Israelis. And so in 2020, God really opened the doors for us, and we were able to purchase the house that we have now, which has a separate unit on the 3rd floor, a separate entrance, separate kitchen, separate everything, but it's the guest house, and it can sleep 7 to 10 people. 10 is probably too much sometimes, but
5 to 7.
7 people is what it's really built for. And this has become just an amazing situation because we didn't advertise Beit Samurai. Some people, they just want a cheap place to stay, of course. But others, especially the ones that we become their base for them. And so they travel to other parts of Japan and they come back. And as they come back, they say, oh, I really missed being home. We really become a home for them. There are people who come to us after traveling in Southeast Asia most of the time. They're staying in hostels in different places. They come to us and they say, wow, I slept for the first time in 3-4 months. I really slept. This place is so peaceful. It feels like home. This is probably the number one word they're always using.
As soon as we walk in, we know it feels like home.
Yeah. And so, especially when we do the Friday night dinners, the Erev Shabbat, Israelis call it shishi, which is for the day 6, shesh, shishi. And most of these guys, almost all of them, they're secular. They're not religious. They probably don't even believe in God. Most
그
of them.
사람들은 그러면 그 코쇼 같은 거는 안 지키는 분들인가요?
Most of them do not. Some of them do, but I would say 75%, they love pork ramen. They love chashu. They love eating these things. And they're here to experience the food. Yeah. And then there's a handful of vegans. Veganism, vegetarians, very popular in Israel.
그런데 그 왔다가 여기가 그 예수를 믿는 사람들이 이렇게 운영하는 거다 이런 사실들을 알고 뭐 기분 나빠하거나 아니면 나가거나 뭐 그러진 않습니까?
Never. Not once. Not once. It's amazing. And a lot of times they're saying, oh, my friend in the army, he or she was Messianic. And so we see that Messianic Judaism in Israel, Meshichi identity, is really penetrating into normal parts of society. And they said, oh, I have friends in Yad Hashmona, which is a Messianic village in Israel. And they say, oh, when I was in New Zealand, when I was staying at Camp Zula, this is run by Meshichi, Messianics. Like, I loved it. It was so great. Do you know this person, that person? So they actually get excited about connecting with Messianic. And then they, of course, see Melissa, a Jewish believer, and that she is the one opening her home, opening her heart to receive them. This is really special. This is something that they really connect with and they see. And then they also see me, a Japanese guy, who loves Israel, who loves Jewish people. So even if they felt a little bit uncomfortable because we're saying Yeshua, of course, it's a stumbling block. But you wouldn't guess it based on how much time they spend with us. They're not just with us on Friday. They also come down during the week. They just come into our living room and want to spend time with us. And you know it's connecting because they're asking questions. They're asking a lot of questions about Yeshua and about Messianic.
한국 사람들은 이스라엘을 가기는 많이 가요. 그런데 이스라엘 사람들이 한국을 방문하는 그 숫자가 이렇게 일본처럼 44,000명 정도나 될지는 잘 모르겠지만 이거보다는 훨씬 작을 것 같아요. 이스라엘 사람들이 이렇게 일본을 많이 찾는 이유는 뭐라고 생각하십니까?
So we often ask this question to the Israelis. The number one reason we hear is anime, manga. These are things that they became interested in. Especially, we have a relationship with Hebrew University and the kids in the Asian Studies program. Call them kids, but they're like 24, 25 years old. But they are studying Japanese. And I asked why. It's because they love anime. And this is why. The other Israelis that come, they explain that there are basically two traditional routes of travel after the army. Israelis travel after the army. This is a cultural phenomenon. The army is very stressful. They get tired. Their reward is to leave the country and to travel. So they either do the South America route or they do the Asia route. And they say that the ones who go to South America will probably never come to Asia. Why? Because the ones who go to South America, these are the ones who just want to party. They just want to get wasted, do drugs, have just fun. You know, this is what they say. That's not everybody. Some are just there for the cultural things too. Don't get me wrong. But they say the ones that come to Asia, because they're going through India, Nepal, Laos, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines,
Korea.
And some are now going to Korea. But these are more there for the culture, for the experience, and for the food, because it's so different. It's so different from Israel. South America is a little bit more like Israel. They're loud. They say what they want. But Asia is very different for them. So these are people who want to experience something different, and that Japan is the most different, is what they say, compared to Southeast Asia, of course. When they're in Singapore, they see some similarities, but they want something different. And they say Japan is like the opposite from Israel, because Israelis, they speak their mind,
too.
They say what they want, they don't hold back, whereas Japanese, everything is about holding back. The honne and tatemai difference. What you really feel versus what you say when you're with somebody. So it's this contrast, I think, that they really like, that they are kind of attracted to.
하나님께서 왜 두 분에게 일본 동경에 이렇게 그 메시아닉 콩그리게이션을 열게 하고 또 게스트하우스를 할 수 있도록 하나님께서 왜 이런 기회를 허락하셨다 이렇게 생각을 하십니까?
I think one of the reasons why God has put us on this path is because also if you look at Israel today, you see the situation in the land is becoming more difficult for Messianic believers. It's becoming, there is some, I think couple months ago, potentially that sharing the gospel with young people, even for Israelis, would become illegal. That already for missionaries, for foreigners in Israel, it's illegal to share the gospel. But that even Israelis could be put in jail for sharing the gospel with someone who is under 18. So within the Messianic community, we were hearing a real fear, a real concern, but that maybe it really focuses the need to share the gospel with Israelis outside of Israel. And we see this really works because when they leave Israel, they're away from their family, they're away from any pressures or influences. They are vulnerable. There's an openness to them. And sometimes they're traveling alone or just with two people, but they like being on their own, but there's homesickness. So when they connect with a Messianic congregation, even if it's Messianic, it's still Jewish, and they see it. They can't deny that Melissa is Jewish. They can't deny this space is a Jewish space, right? And they just feel at home. So being away from Israel, in Israel, you don't have to fight for your Jewish identity. You don't have to fight for feeling comfortable because it's all around you. Everyone is not working on Shabbat. There are Beit Knesset synagogues everywhere. Your family is Jewish. Every Friday night you have dinner with your family. Even if you're not religious, you're doing this traditional thing. But when you are traveling and you don't have that, they really feel it. And they makes them hunger for Jewish expression and their Jewish identity.
I think we're exactly where we need to be, and God is sending exactly the right guests to us at the right times. And they share their heart with us. They share their curiosity about being Messianic and who Yeshua is. They share their questions. If I believed in him, am I still Jewish? There's just an openness in everything you said too.
이 베이트 사무라이에 왔던 그 이스라엘 분들이 여기까지 왔는데 한국을 가고 싶어하는 분들은 없습니까?
There have been a number of guests now that have come to Japan, and they're asking me about Korea, or they already have plans to go to Korea. And one guy was like, "Oh, I don't know if I should go to Korea." And I was like, "No, you should go to Korea." I said, "Korea's great. The food is great. The people are great. You should go." And then he messaged me after he finally went there, because he was only going to go for 1 week. I was like, "No, you went at least 2 weeks in Korea." And he messages me as soon as he gets there after 2 days. He goes, "Isaac, you were right. Korea is so cool." So I think this, and once a few Israelis think this, they start telling their friends, and it will kind of pick up.
Wildfire.
Yeah. The concern was that Korea can be expensive. Also, Japan is a little bit expensive. So if there are places that Israelis can stay for cheap, doesn't have to be free, but cheap, this is really good. So even for Beit Samurai, I'm charging the guests 2,500 yen per night. And usually I'm giving them 1 or 2 free nights if they stay longer, or half the nights free. We're not doing it to make money. It's just to pay for the utilities, and we have a cleaning person who comes and keeps up the place and repairs and whatnot. But if you have a place like this in Korea, Israelis will love to be there, especially if they know that it's a space that is for Israelis. This is the difference. They can go to a hostel that is for anybody, for any internationals, but at Beit Samurai, no one is locking the door, no one is hiding their wallet, no one is worried about their computer, no one is worried about their things, because they're with fellow Israelis. You know, it's like, yeah, it's kind of blind trust, but they're not worried about what's going to happen, and they can really relax. So if there's a place like this in Korea, I think it would immediately become very popular, and also a great opportunity to share the love of Yeshua with Israelis.
만약에 오늘 이 방송을 보는 우리 한국의 브래드TV 시청자들 분 중에 내가 이스라엘 분들을 우리가 모시는 게스트하우스를 좀 운영하고 싶다, 또는 우리 집에 좀 모시고 싶다, 이런 생각을 갖고 있는 분들에게 먼저 시작하셨던 두 분의 입장으로서 이스라엘 사람들을 머물게 하는 게스트를 하려면은 게스트하우스를 하려면 이런 점을 특별히 더 신경 써야 합니다라고 이렇게 조언해 주실 게 있으면 어떤 것들이 있을까요?
So for you in Korea, I think that Israeli guests would love to be invited into a Korean space and see how a Korean family lives, and you don't have the Japanese tatami style, but everything that would make a Korean house feel special and inviting to them.
Yeah, because they're there to experience Korea, right? So things that are unique to Korea, that are part of a place you stay, is important. The other thing I would mention is we learned early on, if you invite Israelis to a meal, really always have a vegetarian option. And at first we weren't thinking about this, and we invited a bunch of Israelis to have an oneg meal here after Shabbat service, and everything had meat in it. And the Israelis, they came and they were happy, but they couldn't eat anything besides a salad, right?
Yeah, nothing had pork, but
Yeah.
they needed vegetarian.
Yeah, so just always have one option, even if you're not sure they might be a vegetarian.
Because they love vegetables.
They love vegetables, they really do. So I think those are two things.
Yeah.
The third one is really how you communicate. Israelis, they love stories. They love to hear a good story. So when you're sharing the faith, don't just share what the Bible says. Share your own experience. Share your testimony about how you were transformed by the Messiah of Israel, by the God of Israel. Like, tell it this way.
Yeah.
Because this provokes them to jealousy. Wow, my God, the God of my people, transformed this person's life.
Yes.
The Mashiach of Israel did something for this, so if you put it this way, it's very different than just saying God did this, God did that, or Jesus did this.
Because they know history. They live in the land of the Bible, right?
Yeah.
But if you show them that God is a living God and He's working miracles today in your life, they will be captivated.
Yeah, this is the most powerful thing. It doesn't matter if you make them read the Bible or not, but if you talk about God, that He is alive and what He's doing and what He's done, they can't argue with this, right? And it gives them something.
That's right. And the last thing, I think, is that any host should always know and value their Jewishness, that even if they come to faith in Jesus and Yeshua, that they are absolutely Jewish, and that they haven't converted and they have not lost any ounce of their Jewishness.
두 분의 사역, 브래드TV 시청자들과 제가 응원하고 또 두 분의 사역에 대해서 지금까지 해오고 있는 그 사역에 대해서 자세하게 설명해 주셔서 너무 감사를 드리고요. 또 저와 우리 브래드TV 시청자 여러분들이 두 분의 사역을 열심히 또 응원하고 일본에 있는 그 베이트 사무라이와 또 한국의 또 다른 게스트하우스가 연결돼서 이렇게 일본과 한국을 찾는 이스라엘 사람들이 많아졌으면 좋겠습니다. 오늘 이렇게 귀한 시간 내주셔서 고맙습니다. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.